Season 2 of Netflix's live adaptation of One Piece is getting closer by the day, and with One Piece being the highly built-up world that it is, there's a lot to talk about, from its characters, to its islands, to its power struggles. Today's video is going to be on the world map of One Piece. The purpose of these videos is to provide additional context and answer some possible questions for people watching the live-action One Piece but haven't seen or read the source material. Let's jump in. Here is a detailed map of the world of One Piece. Note, this is not a complete map. There is no complete map, but it is relatively up-to-date based on what's been seen in the first 1,000 chapters. This world has no name, it is clearly not Earth as you or I know it, and if you were to map it onto a globe, it would look like this. We have one long stretch of land that forms a ring around the globe that is known as the Red Line. Perpendicular to that is a stretch of ocean known famously as the Grand Line. These two lines split the world into 4 seas known appropriately as the North Blue, the West Blue, South Blue, and East Blue, the East Blue being where most of Season 1 takes place. The Red Line is a very tall and sturdy landmass and heavily controlled by the government, so passing over it is pretty much impossible for the average pirate. Big as it is, the Red Line seems to be mostly uninhabited, except by highly influential people. I'd rather not get too far into it this early in the series. While this is the only continent the world has to offer, we don't get to see much of it. After all, this is a series about pirates. Our primary locations will be islands and oceans. Conversely, the Grand Line is the most detailed and engaging part of the world. Navigating the waters is dangerous, it's difficult to come and go, and of course the titular treasure is hidden somewhere within its borders. Now, the first season hasn't said much about the Grand Line, but you'll find out what I'm about to say in the first couple of episodes of Season 2, so I feel like it's okay to dive into this part. So, one might look at this map and go, wait, can't you just sail into any part of the Grand Line? No, you cannot. The entire Grand Line is bordered by something known as calm belts. Calm belts have no wind to blow your sails, no current to carry your ship, and house some of the most terrifying creatures in the world known as Sea Kings. Remember the giant fish that bit off Shanks' arm? That was a Sea King. Scratch that, that was a small Sea King. Anyone trying to make their way across a calm belt would almost assuredly perish before reaching the other side. Okay, so how do you enter the Grand Line? The first season has actually already addressed this.
The entrance to the Grand Line isn't too far off, but it doesn't make any sense. These elevations show a mountain. I mean, how can a river go up a mountain?
Find out in Season 2. To make a long story short, this is the only way to properly enter the Grand Line. As you can see from the map, all 4 seas run into this mountain and then out into the first half of the Grand Line. Yes, I said first half. Sure, you noticed at some point in the video, but the Red Line cuts the Grand Line in half. So how do you get from one side to the other? Find out in 6 to 8 seasons. Or if you really want to know, it's not a big deal. You could just go under it. There's a gap and it's a whole big thing. But you didn't hear it from me any. You know the funny part? Just on the other side of Reverse Mountain, it's the end of the Grand Line. So, like, One Piece is somewhere around there, probably. That's already more than I can say about the Grand Line without diving into some serious spoilers, at least until the show develops more. Let's just say that even taking the Reverse Mountain path is dangerous enough to get most people killed. Not only that, you can't use it to go back either, so once you make the trip, you're pretty stuck in the Grand Line. This also means you can't use Reverse Mountain to get from one sea to another. The 4 seas don't really have a way to connect to each other. I mean, there is this thing called the All Blue that Sanji keeps talking about where all the oceans meet, but I don't know, I don't think it's going to be relevant. To travel from one sea to the other, you need to pass through either the Red Line or the Grand Line, neither of which is easy or simple for the reasons I just laid out. As large as these seas are, only the East Blue has any significance in terms of story arcs. The other 3 seas serve more as character backgrounds or side stories. Of course, the East Blue isn't that significant either when compared to another more famous body of water. 90% of One Piece's story to date takes place in the Grand Line. So as big as they seem, you've already learned pretty much all there is to learn about the 4 seas watching the first season. Let's dive into where everything is. First, we have Luffy's hometown, Fuchsia Village, located here on Dawn Island. This is where all his flashbacks so far take place. We know that at some point between the flashbacks and the beginning of the story, he left this village on a boat to become a pirate. He eventually encounters Kobe on Alvida's ship, somewhere in the East Blue, probably not too far from Shellstown here, in the Yotsuba Island region, as that's where they head next. Kobe just spontaneously came into existence, I guess. They don't really tell us where he's from, and I couldn't find it during my research. Leave a comment if you know where Kobe's from. Zoro is from Shimotsuki village on this island over here. We don't know the name of the island itself, just this one village. However, the namesake of this village ends up being relevant to a much later part of the story for what it's worth. After growing up to become a bounty hunter, Zoro left this island and at some point ended up on Six's island way down here. This is where the first episode shows his encounter with a man named Mr. Seven from Baroque Works, something that is extremely relevant to the upcoming second and third season. After this encounter, Zoro ends up at Shell's Town where he encounters Luffy and Nami. As for Nami, we know that she's from Cocoa Village, located on the Konomi Islands over here, and probably traveled to a lot of different places while drawing maps before also ending up at Shell's Town. The trio leave Shell's Town together and end up captured by Buggy's crew. They're taken to Orange Town in the Oregon Archipelago Islands, and yeah, Orange Town has seen better days. Afterwards, they continue southwest and end up at Syrup Village in the Gecko Islands to pick up a new ship. This is where Usopp is from and has lived all his life. After obtaining a new ship, the now 4-person crew take off and immediately encounter Baratie after an encounter with Luffy's grandpa Garp. Baratie is a restaurant ship in the middle of the East Blue. I imagine that being a ship, it is actually mobile and could be anywhere in the sea. So let's just say it's somewhere between Syrup Village and Cocoa Village. At Baratie is where they meet and pick up Sanji as a new crew member. Prior to this, and this is information we don't actually find out until later, Sanji was actually from the North Blue. At some point as a child, Sanji made his way from the North Blue to the East Blue, and during that time is when he worked as a ship's cook, encountered Zeph, and got stranded on a random rock. Surviving 85 days on that rock, they eventually went on to open the sea restaurant Baratie and thus encountered Luffy's crew. By the way, before Hawkeye Mihawk shows up at Baratie to locate Luffy, he was actually somewhere on the Grand Line, massacring Don Krieg's crew. Hawkeye is one of the few people who can easily travel in and out of the Grand Line because that is how tough he is. Anyway, a betrayal by Nami leaves the Straw Hat crew heading to Cocoa Village in the Konomi Islands, again, Nami's hometown. Just north of this village is where Arlong Park is located, and the final showdown of the season between Arlong and Luffy. That pretty much covers everything we've seen so far from the live-action version. As you can see, the group has made some steady progress towards the Grand Line's primary entrance. However, before we get there, the crew is going to have one more stop at the beginning of Season 2. Logtown is the place everyone stops to supply themselves for the journey into the Grand Line. It is also the place that the legendary Gold Roger was executed 20 years ago. Indeed, this town is the prologue to many pirate journeys as well as the epilogue to Rogers. Hence the name, Logtown. I hope you found this video useful, looking forward to Season 2. If people liked what I did here, I'd like to do more once we see what the live-action adaptation has to offer. This has been Quiz Guru of the Funimapa Foundation. Bye, Anara.